Hello everyone, welcome back to another brand new video. In today's video we will be covering my favorite character of the series, that being Mechamaru. Mechamaru has always been a character that's fascinated me, especially after seeing his fight with Mahito at the beginning of Season 2. That fight is probably my favorite fight of the entire show, but that's a video for another time. Today, I thought it'd be fun to break down the matchups of Ultimate Mechamaru Mode Absolute versus each one of the Disaster Curses. I've never been the biggest fan of power scaling, but Mechamaru is an exception. He's such a unique figure in the grand scheme of Jujutsu Kaisen, and it's time to put Ultimate Mechamaru Mode Absolute to the test and find out if he can manage to do what many others in the series cannot by defeating the Disaster Curses. Let's first start by breaking down what we know about Mode Absolute. It's obviously a giant Mechamaru cursed corpse with a limited span of cursed energy. It has a total of 17 years, 5 months, and 6 days worth of cursed energy to use, the total amount of life that Kokishi Muta himself has lived. Muta himself resides in the cockpit of Mode Absolute, operating the cursed corpse from there. On to the attacks. On screen we see a myriad of different attacks he uses. We see him use Ultra Cannon, which is just a huge blast of energy from the hand of Mode Absolute, and it uses 1 year of cursed energy. Next up is Miracle Cannon, an even bigger blast of energy, now needing 2 hands to use and 2 years of cursed energy. After that is Pigeon Viola. Using 5 years of cursed energy, Mechamaru essentially creates 5 cursed energy torpedoes with homing capabilities. We can assume Mechamaru has more attacks in his arsenal, but since we never see them, it's something we can't really include in our assessment of today's matchups. Anyways, it's time for the big kicker, the thing that keeps our boy Mechamaru in all of these matchups. 4 tubes of Simple Domain. Simple Domain, of course, being a counter to a domain expansion, something that all 4 of the Disaster Curses possess. Mechamaru's simple domains can even be used offensively as well, being stabbed or shot into an opponent to create soul damage. So you might be saying, well Evan, we saw firsthand Mechamaru lose to Mahito, so we already know he'd lose to at least one of the Disaster Curses. Well, let's start with the Mechamaru and Mahito rematch because it's just not that simple. Now obviously we saw Mechamaru lose to Mahito in the show, but that particular battle had some funny business that won't be happening here. In the show, Mechamaru was saving cursed energy because he was preparing to fight Geto after Mahito, meaning he wasn't giving himself the best possible chance to kill Mahito. Also, Mechamaru takes a huge deadly sneaking blow from Mahito that completely changes the tide of the fight once he's distracted by Geto and thinking of Miwa. In today's hypothetical matchup, there is no looming threat of Geto or distracting drive to see Miwa. It's just a straight one-on-one fight. The question is, do these changes affect the results of the fight? And unfortunately, they probably don't. What makes Mahito such a bad matchup is the fact that only soul damage hurts him, so Mechamaru would need to land all 4 of his simple domains into Mahito to even have a chance at killing him, and I just don't think he can do that. First of all, he already has to use 1 simple domain tube to avoid being killed by the domain expansion, and another to ram into Mahito to get out of the domain expansion. The problem here being, now that Mahito knows that these simple domain attacks hurt him, he's going to be a lot less careless with how he takes this fight. Mechamaru can almost guarantee a successful use of 3 out of the 4 of his simple domains, the first being a surprise attack, the second to avoid instant domain expansion death, the third to surprise attack Mahito and get out of the domain. The problem is that his 4th hit isn't guaranteed, and that's what cost Mechamaru in their actual fight. He had to go mano-a-mano with Mahito and risk his life to land that 4th simple domain, and he failed. There's a world where Mechamaru can win this matchup, I truly do believe that, especially against a pre-Shibuya Mahito, but in a fair 1v1, I'm gonna have to give Mahito the win here. Now let's move on to Hanami, the Plant Disaster Curse. When I initially thought up this video, I thought Mechamaru would be able to handle Hanami fairly easily. However, after doing the research, it went from an easy Mechamaru win to a leaning Hanami win, and here's why. Let's start by breaking down what Hanami brings to the table. Her strongest asset by far is her durability. She's able to tank a Black Flash assault from Yuji and Todo, something that Gege himself has confirmed that somebody like Jogo couldn't even survive. And on top of that, she ends up getting hit with a goddamn hollow purple after that and still survives. She's in no shape to fight after that, but still surviving one of the verse's strongest moves is a great feat. Hanami, of course, also has great strength and speed to go along with her durability, but another unique ability of hers that will help her here is her hidden presence. Hanami is able to briefly stay hidden from the Six Eyes.
He got away. He's good at hiding his presence.
Yeah, that's a feat that a lot of people forget about, but she does it. So if Mechamaru at any point loses Hanami in this matchup, he's bound to get hit with a sneak attack. Hanami's Disaster Plants technique is actually incredibly useful here. The vines that she's able to summon against Yuji and Todo are huge and hard to dodge. Mechamaru being a giant target is not going to mesh well against that. She also has her Flower Field ability, which summons a flower field that takes away your will to fight the longer you stand in it. However, I don't think this ability will do that much here against somebody huge like Mechamaru, who can probably get away from the field no problem. Hanami's final ability is her domain expansion, and we don't know a lot about it. We know that she has a domain expansion and that the sure hit is the beam charged with Hanami's left arm, but that's about it. So how does this fight go? I think it goes a little something like this. Mechamaru starts with a Miracle Cannon or an Ultra Cannon and Hanami tanks it no problem. Hanami then uses her vines to go on the offensive against Mechamaru, and these vines will probably compromise the mech a significant amount, as we see one big punch from Mahito rattle the mech in the actual show. I think Mechamaru would respond with a Pigeon Viola to knock away the vines to try and land another shot on Hanami. When the Pigeon Viola is up, Hanami will have vanished, using her hidden presence to set up for a sneak attack, which she will then probably land, setting up Mechamaru for a bad loss. If Mechamaru is able even to recover from that and do anything significant damage-wise, Hanami will end up popping her domain expansion. Mechamaru will use his simple domains to last, but I think he's just stalling out a loss here. I think Hanami is far too durable and far too strong for Mechamaru. I think this just ends up being a surprisingly bad matchup for Mechamaru. Now let's move on to Dagon, the Water Disaster Curse. Dagon by far is the weakest disaster curse on paper, his only real problem being his domain expansion, which is actually really good against groups of sorcerers. Dagon's Disaster Tides technique actually shouldn't be a huge problem against Mechamaru. I guess we don't know how high he can rise those tides, but if he had the option to set them higher when fighting against Maki, Naoto, and Nanami in Shibuya, why didn't he just drown them? So that would lead me to believe that his tides are only really good in small spaces, and Mechamaru is not going to be affected by that. Dagon has the usual super speed, strength, and durability, but not on the levels of the other disaster curses. We see Dagon genuinely getting whooped by Naoto and Nanami before he pops his domain expansion, and had Megumi actually gotten the gang out of Dagon's domain expansion, they would have beaten him. Dagon really only has his domain expansion. His sure hit of Shikigami is a really strong attack, but Mechamaru should be able to get out of it no problem with his simple domain. I also just don't think Dagon can tank shit like a Miracle Cannon or a Pigeon Viola, and he probably isn't fast enough to outrun a Pigeon Viola. He's also susceptible to being tricked because of his overconfidence. He thinks nothing of Megumi's domain clash in Shibuya, and it directly leads to his death. And against a very smart sorcerer in Mechamaru, I think Mechamaru could use that to his advantage to land some sort of surprise attack. But even then, I honestly don't think things get that dire. I think Mechamaru could handle Dagon pretty handily. Once Dagon pops domain and Mechamaru escapes, he's cooked. Now on to our final matchup, Jogo, the Fire Disaster Curse. Now this matchup is such a fun one to discuss because it has the possibility to go either way. Now don't get me wrong, I definitely think Jogo wins this, but this isn't an unwinnable matchup for Mechamaru. Breaking down Jogo's abilities, starting with his Disaster Flames, capable of burning shit, plain and simple, and it can manifest into close range attacks and long range attacks. It's very versatile. Jogo can also summon ember insects from the volcano in his head, and these insects act as mini kamikazes, exploding near opponents to do damage. Jogo also has his maximum meteor attack, which he uses against Sukuna. This has always been an attack that's puzzled me. Sukuna says himself that if it landed on him, it would have hurt him, so we know that this attack is very strong. Yet we see Kusakabe and Panda escape its blast radius unscathed despite being right under it. Now I don't know if this attack is strong but slow as shit, or if this is a bit of a plot hole, but if Panda and Kusakabe can escape it, even though they were standing right under it when it was unleashed, I think even Mechamaru, being the big target he is, can escape it. If this was all Jogo had to offer, I think Mechamaru could take this fight. Jogo is the least durable disaster curse as far as I know, being described as a glass cannon. I doubt he can tank a miracle cannon or a pigeon viola without sustaining major damage. However, the issue is he's probably never going to get hit by them. Jogo's speed is his crowning achievement. Jogo is a top 5 fastest character in the verse, capable of speed blitzing his opponents. If Mahito can outrun a pigeon viola, so can Jogo. I think Jogo can damage the mech with his disaster flames and speed blitz the shit out of Mechamaru for a quick win. Mechamaru would have to Gigabrain predict where Jogo is going to be and perfectly land a miracle cannon or any attack strong enough to hurt Jogo to have a chance of winning this one. If Mechamaru lands something big, he probably can take it. However, he most definitely won't. So there we go. In fair 1v1s, Ultimate Mechamaru, Mode Absolute, finishes his bouts with the Disaster Curses with a record of 1-3. Honestly, a bit disappointing, but I'll never not defend my boy Mechamaru. I do think Mechamaru can beat all 4 of the Disaster Curses in the right scenarios, but in a fair 1v1, not so much. I'm interested to know what you guys think. Did I get these matchups right? Did I get them wrong? Comment down below your thoughts. If you like content like this and want more, let me know. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more, and as always, have a wonderful day.